Hi, I'm Bally.
I'm Mark.
We're at the Smash Factory in London, Ontario. This is our Q&A show.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of questions come in from our other videos, so we figured some of these questions aren't really stuff that we can do a challenge on, but we think it's a lot of stuff that's worth addressing. So I think I'm just kind of scrolling through our email feed. So we're going to talk about a few different topics today. Why don't we just dive in and
yeah, let's do it.
Okay. One of the biggest questions is newer better? The answer is not necessarily.
Not necessarily. Yeah, I would agree. I think the big thing too is like the equipment manufacturers work really hard on creating a better product, right? And I think a lot of us wonder, is it better than my last year model, or is it better than a couple years ago, right? And sometimes the answer is yes, sometimes the answer is no. And I think a lot of what changes is, I mean, the center of the face is quite maxed out, right? Like it has been for a long time.
Yeah, provided you were to hit it right in the center every time, pretty much no driver is going to change.
Which 99.9% of us do not do that. So there is importance in having something that's a little bit more forgiving, and I think that's what a lot of the driver companies are doing now. And I think sound is a really big proponent of that too, right? And the way it looks, right? So you might have a driver that performs exceptionally well, but you don't exactly love the aesthetics of it or the sound of it. And that's where newer can be better in that scenario as well. Or sometimes newer drivers just completely outperform previous models. It really depends on who's getting fit for it. So it's kind of a tough answer because it's not always the case, and sometimes newer is not better for certain people. Sometimes it blows it out of the water. So it's kind of an individual thing. But you got to test that to see, right? And to really make sure. Yeah,
I think that's going to be our answer for a lot of things, really. It comes down to that. That's why everything that we do, we start with a fitting, because of anything we've learned, you can't fit somebody from what the paper says.
No,
this shaft should kick and create this head should do this. Yep. Everybody reacts to the products differently.
Yeah, I think it's important to realize that, like, the equipment manufacturers are here to sell equipment, right? So they're going to say, yes, newer is better, right? Because they want you to buy the new product, which in certain cases it is true. And we're not saying they're lying, but there's definitely certain occasions where it's not going to be that much better, and it might not be worthwhile for an upgrade for you for a period of time, right? So you always got to just talk with your fitter. Again, I think it's important to voice those concerns with your fitter, right? And I want to hear that, right? As someone comes in and go, hey, I've got this ping driver, I want to try the new one. Maybe it's way better, maybe it's pretty subpar, or it's the exact same, right? So you might go, hey, you know what? Hold off, wait till next year, or wait till the next model comes out, and you might see a significant improvement.
Okay. This one came up a lot. It's probably some of our buddies chirping us. Why is Matt so short?
I didn't realize. Okay.
I just play in the hand I was dealt.
There's not much you can do about that.
That's why we sit Mark on a stool.
No, you can tell, or else I look too gigantic next to this guy.
If you sit up perfectly,
I think we're about the same height.
That hurts. Fitting for higher handicappers. So this is a big one because I mean I was just talking to somebody. We get this a lot. People say, you know what, my golf swing isn't good enough to get fit.
Yeah.
And it's funny because it's the opposite. And what I mean by that is everybody, whether your golf swing looks like Tiger or looks like me or looks like a beginner, all golfers have a tendency.
Absolutely.
So you could fit around a tendency, whether it's an over-the-top move, whether it's an underneath move, whatever the case is, there's a way to create more consistency in what we build based on the swing.
Absolutely.
So when golfers come in, the biggest worry, and we see you spend 15 minutes with just talking to a higher handicapper, getting them comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely.
And saying, you know, they're saying, oh, well, yeah, I used to hit it like this, but now I hit it like this. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, let's just build what fits you. Yeah. And people need to understand that better players can figure out how to make their gear work.
That's 100%. No, we see it all the time. Like, you give a tour player something that's way out of spec for them, they're going to notice it. They're not going to love it, but they're going to figure out how to make it work. Right? Yeah. So it's important to, as a higher handicap, it's important to have the right equipment, right? I think, like, for me, I play an iron that I love. I can play a few others in here as well that I like as well. But I think it's important as a higher handicapper or someone just getting into the game, right? Is you can't have stuff that's really ill-fitted, because it's going to create that much more of a hurdle. Your hill is going to be a lot steeper to climb when you're starting the game. You're going to have a lot more mishits, and I think that's the thing that kind of keeps people out of playing for a long period of time, right? Is they get too frustrated right away and they go, I'm sick of this, right? So it's really, really important to, again, talk to your fitter about that and say, hey, you know what, I'm a newer player, or I'm battling this injury or whatever it is.
And it's a big thing for juniors as well.
Absolutely.
I mean, Tiger talked about it a lot. His equipment, as he grew up, always fit him.
It's true.
Just cutting down, my old set of clubs and giving it to my daughter,
it's
going to be too heavy, too stiff. It's not going to work. It's going to create more bad habits and more difficulties than finding something that can properly fit her.
Yeah,
right?
and especially like juniors, for example, right? Like they're very moldable very early, right? They can change their golf swings 6 months, not even, right? So I think it's important to understand that, okay, there's a period of time that you can make something work, but at a certain level or at a certain point, even if you're a 25 handicap, you need to look at something and you need to talk to somebody like us at Smash Factory about those issues that you have. And again, you don't have to spend $5,000 on your equipment, but maybe a new set of irons, 6 to pitching wedge is going to make your life a lot more fun when you go out there, and maybe a little bit more forgiveness or whatever it might be, right? And it even comes down to like a lot of the people that come in here, grip style is really important, right? Something that I kind of brush over in my own bag. I mean, there's certain clubs that I have certain grips on for certain reasons, but it's really important to find that comfort level, right? And find that comfort zone. And without a fitting, and you just walking into a shop and saying, hey, those look good, you're going to really struggle, or most of us are really going to struggle. So don't think that you're not good enough to come in for a fitting, because that's one thing that we see all the time is people do have that attitude. And I think once they leave the door, they realize, wow, you know what? That was a lot different than what I expected. And I think our goal here is, again, to help. If you're a tour player or you're a 50 handicap, right? It doesn't
don't be
matter to us,
intimidated.
for sure, right? We're only here to help.
Yep.
And I think the majority of fitters are in the same boat, right? So just trust that they're trying to help you and understand.
Yeah, there's a lot of good fitters out there.
A lot of them, right? Yep. And I think it's important to, you want to know that, okay, we're not just looking for 2 handicaps to come in here, right? The average golfer is definitely not a 2 handicap. So I think, and their struggles are different than at the top level, but there's still something that a club fitting can really help with. So it's important.
What's the difference in a draw bias driver versus a fade bias driver?
Okay.
So I think this is something kind of cool that we can talk about, and maybe we can just kind of get into it a little bit now, but let's discuss a right-handed driver.
Yeah.
And we'll just talk about heel or toe, but I mean, again, if
you flip it backwards.
I guess heel and toe.
Yeah.
And then the next question, which relates to it, is how do you reduce driver spin?
Okay.
So we get a lot of customers here that swing, whether it's their path that's creating spin, whatever, but they spin it too much and it's just killing their distance.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Inconsistency, exactly.
So the simple answer is a draw bias driver versus a fade bias driver.
Yeah.
When, you know what, I'm going to grab
some.
Yeah, let me just grab a head. Yeah. So, essentially, in order to draw it, and we're just going to talk about where the face is.
Yeah.
We're not going to talk about path and impact and all that stuff. Let's assume you're hitting it dead center. The face generally will need to be closed in order to make the ball curve left. We're talking about right-handers. If the face is open, generally the ball is going to want to curve to the right. So that's the basics of draw fade. Yeah. Now, if you have more weight in the heel, it's going to make the toe lighter and the toe is going to flip shut. That helps square the face or shut the face. So draw. Weight in the heel, draw. Weight in the toe slows down the toe, which means the heel can actually travel a little faster than the toe, which as the club is rotating into the ball, the toe will kind of lag behind, and that will keep the face open and fade it.
Yeah.
In basic terms,
for
right?
sure. And obviously, I mean, I think understanding that, okay, a lot of these drivers are adjustable, right? So a lot of these drivers will have a slidable, movable track on the back. And obviously having it more in the heel position is going to make you turn it over more, in theory.
Turn it over meaning draw?
Yeah, meaning draw. And then if that weight's more out to the toe, kind of what Matt said, is it's going to help you fade a little bit more. You can also play with face angle, right? So all of these drivers now have a loft sleeve, 99% of them. Whereas if you went down in loft, and I think this is something that it's been a constant for a long time, but not everybody understands.
Yeah.
If I go down from my 10.5 degree driver here and I go down a degree, it's going to open the face a little bit, right? So I'm going to take a little bit of loft off, and it's also going to open that face. Opposite is true when you add loft, right? So if I went from 10.5 to 11.5 or 12.5, that would close the face a percentage of a couple of degrees or so, right? So certain different companies, it's more or less, but the understanding is 1 or 2 degrees based on how much loft you go up or down.
So the interesting thing there, and what Mark's talking about, is that not all 10 degrees is equal.
It's true.
So for example, let's say I needed a 10-degree driver. Well, we could, let's say 10 degree.
Yeah.
We could get a high lofted driver, an 11-degree driver, crank it down to get it to 10 degrees, which will be more open, which is more fade bias. Or we could get, a 9-degree driver,
and turn it
add loft to get it to 10 degrees, but it'll be more draw bias because the face will shut.
Exactly.
So even though we have the same loft, the driver's completely different.
For sure. The face angle is what's changing a lot, right? And a lot of people that draw it or better players like to see the face open, right? Because they can always turn it over, or hook it, or draw it. So it's nice to have a little buffer zone of that face a little bit open. So that's why you'll see a lot of guys on tour do the same thing. You'll see in the average guy's bag that it might be set up neutral, or it might be set up improperly for them without them knowing, right? So this is a big thing, is like, depending on your shot shape, there's a few ways that you can adjust things, right? So understand that if you want to hit that big peeling draw, or that big slice, you can set up your driver a certain fashion to help you do that. It's not going to make sure it happens every single time, because at the end of the day, we're still human beings. So there's going to be some error, but it will help you do it more often, basically.
So it's just to add a note to that, what a lot of people will see is, you Google what's in the bag and what's on the PGA Tour, and you see, you name a tour pro, and this driver loft, people go, wow, there's a photo of it, and it's a 10-degree driver in the bag, and he's one of the longest guys on tour.
Yeah.
Maybe it is 10 degrees. It could be 8 degrees.
Absolutely.
You never know. What's stamped on the club is almost irrelevant with how much you can modify.
For sure. And all these drivers have that ability to be modified.
Yeah.
And I think, great example, what Bally was just saying, Bryson DeChambeau's driver, right? It might say 8 degrees on it, but it might actually be at 5, right? And there's really no way of us knowing unless there's a little marking on there. But I think that's where everything is marginally different, and that's why I think doing a fitting, even if you're into a stock driver shaft, the way that we set it up really, really helps, right? And can really affect your game positively or negatively, right? So it's important to understand that. And I think obviously every driver now comes with a little booklet and a tool that gives you advice on what to do based on what you're seeing. But a lot of people just don't feel comfortable changing around with their driver and playing around with things. So it's important you can ask your fitter, right? And say, hey, you know what, this is what I'm seeing. And maybe they can help you kind of fine tune the aspect of it. If you love the shape of the driver, that's another thing too, is talk to your fitter about making those modifications to make it more draw bias or make it more fade bias. And that's something that I like hearing as a fitter, going, hey, you know what, I'm always missing left. So in my mind, I go, okay, this person needs that face angle a little bit more open, or needs something that's not going to want to draw as much. So it's important, really important.
So next question, how to reduce driver spin. And I think we can do a really cool segment. We should do a video on this and teach people about spin loft.
Absolutely, yeah.
So we can talk very quickly, but essentially your spin loft, you'll explain it better, but your angle of attack and your loft delivered.
Exactly.
Your dynamic loft.
Exactly, right? So a lot of people talk about hitting up on it, right? And that's a big thing now in the new game, where we have these launch monitors and we have all this tech behind it. We understand how something actually works. Because I think back in the day, it used to be, well, a fade spins more and a draw spins less, right?
Yeah.
So a draw is always going to go further. Well, that's somewhat true, but it's not the whole story, right? So I think it's important to understand that spin loft is the biggest determinant, right? So how much loft you deliver and how much you hit up or down on something is a big proponent. So if I hit up 5 degrees on a driver like this, right? So it's sitting up on a tee and I have 10 degrees of loft, my spin loft will be 5, right? So, but if I hit negatively, so if I hit 5 degrees down on a 10-degree driver, and that's how much I deliver, my spin loft will be at 15. So that's a huge, huge difference.
So
right?
it's the dynamic loft, which is the loft delivered.
You deliver, yeah.
So we're assuming you deliver 10.
Yeah.
Minus the spin loft.
Yeah. Yes, you're right. So yes, it is. But think about, so a negative number adds to a positive.
Sorry, not minus the spin loft.
You're right.
Minus the, sorry, we have dynamic.
Yeah.
And then minus the attack angle.
Yes.
Creates
exactly.
your spin loft.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
and then,
sorry, I messed that up.
That's okay. And then, and like Valley was saying, like a positive attack angle, you minus that from how much loft you deliver. If you're someone who's down on it, that's where typically the ball is going to launch lower.
Yeah, so now you're subtracting the negative, which adds loft, creates spin.
That's exactly
and
it.
that's what we can show really well on video. We can do some fun stuff with,
Yeah.
with delivering loft, and you can rip
Absolutely.
some drivers and show people and spin them at
Absolutely.
$6,000.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, exactly. And I think just one more point to add to that, like I was going to say, is everybody talks about hitting up on it, right? But if you're hitting up on it and delivering too much loft on the face of the driver, it's just going to go up in the air and it's just going to spin a ton. So the whole goal is to kind of create an upwards angle of attack, but not deliver too much loft, right? So it's kind of like hitting a forehand in ping pong or tennis. Versus a kind of that cut shot, right? So driver, no different. It's really important to control your spin loft, and if you are someone who hits down on it, that's okay. Again, talk to your fitter about that and say, hey, you deal with these sort of things, and that's something that we can definitely help with in a fitting. So.
Okay, last question. This was a good one too. What kind of shirts are you wearing?
Oh, good question. Yeah.
We're not telling.
Yeah.
Eventually we will. Right now, we won't.
Yeah. So, yeah, I won't go into that too much, but we appreciate the feedback.
Yeah.
I'm glad you like them.
Yeah, glad you like them.
They're quite comfortable and they're very, very stylish.
And that's it.
That's all you get.
Yeah. So, anyway, that'll cover our first Q&A. We do have a lot more, but please keep firing them in.
Yeah.
So let's make sure. Yeah, we'll do a video teaching about spin loft.
Absolutely.
If you have more questions about all of the stuff that we've talked about there, feel free, fire away, and we're happy to elaborate more.
Yep.
Lots more good stuff to come.
Absolutely.
And I guess we'll see you next time.
Yeah. Have a good one. Thanks.